are all here self-selected, right? So there's, I guess immediately for me, there's something that tells me there is a healthy drive inside of all of you to want to talk about things that have been going on in your life, right? Like it's quite a big thing to put yourself forward to do this, and I recognise that, but it also speaks to me that there's something really healthy inside of you that wants to talk, wants to share, wants to connect. And so I wonder where the group wants to begin. What I often say to people that I work with, this is not therapy, but I am trained in a particular way to notice things that sometimes are outside of our own awareness. That is ultimately the kind of at the heart of psychotherapy, right? And so I often ask people's permission, is it okay if I notice something that you're doing that might be contributing to some of the difficulties that you want to talk about? Is it okay to share that with you, right? And you can change your mind. You could say yes now, and then midway through you could go, no, I don't want to hear about that. And that's totally fine. But I say that at the start just to really see if that's okay with you. And it's okay if you say no too, okay? Yeah. For me, I guess as the facilitator, it's just as important the times I don't speak as the times I do. So at times I won't be speaking. I'll let you speak amongst yourselves. So the way, again, I like to kind of work in groups is, say, for instance, I'm going to pick Bill or Adam because I know their names off the bat here. I'm going to learn all of your names. But say if Bill said something and something resonates for Adam and Adam says, when I hear you say that, it makes me think of this. Please don't feel like you're waiting for my permission, because there'll be large points of time that I'm absolutely silent and observing the group so that I can share later on. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you're not waiting for me at any point, right? I might say, hey, can we slow down and really pay attention to what you're saying, but you don't have to wait for my permission. Yeah. So how about we start with introductions, because as I mentioned, I do know a couple of you, but it would be nice if you could maybe introduce yourself to one another and me, really, and we'll go from there, yeah. So can start wherever. We don't have to go round in a circle.
I can go, yeah.
Yeah.
John Hutchins. Profession-wise, got a clothing business. Sporty guy, married, no children yet. Live local to here. Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Nice. I'm Elliot. I'm Welsh. I'm from Cardiff, but I've lost the accent. Work-wise, do sales and stand-up as well. Live in Leamington, pretty local. No girlfriend or kids yet, so lonely. No, joking.
I don't want to come off the back of lonely, but yeah. My name's Grieving. I was in the NHS for about 6-7 years. Did a bit of mental health stuff in between, but now we'll kind of run my own business with my brother in terms of health insurance. Recently married. I did lose my hair before the marriage, so it's not that stressful. You just say yes, but that's it. Yeah.
I'm Adam. I'm married. We have 2 kids, one that's 3 and one that's 1. I used to be a physio in the NHS for 10 years. I've now changed to property development and interior design, so quite a big shift. Yeah. But I'm sure more will come out as we go down the line.
I'm Nick. I'm a tailor. I live in Rugby. I'm the resident addict of the group, I believe, recovering addict. I make suits. I'm divorced, but in a new relationship. Just excited to be here and to see what everyone's got to talk about.
Thanks, Nick.
Cheers, mate. I'm Bill. I'm 30, from Rugby. I run a clothing brand called DRM, which I'm sporting today, obviously. That raises awareness for mental health. That's what me and my partner Erin do on the side, and my main job, I'm a carpenter for an engineering firm.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, so you are all here self-selected, right? So there's, I guess immediately for me, there's something that tells me there is a healthy drive inside of all of you to want to talk about things that have been going on in your life, right? Like it's quite a big thing to put yourself forward to do this, and I recognise that, but it also speaks to me that there's something really healthy inside of you that wants to talk, wants to share, wants to connect. And so I wonder where the group wants to begin.
Well, I'll jump in. I think for me, wanting to be a part of these conversations to show people that these conversations happen. So sort of trying to see from the guys as to what conversations you've been a part of. Is it at work? Is it through mates? Is it through partners or wives? Where are these mental health conversations happening for you guys individually? You know, we spoke quickly about barbershops and how barbers are facilitating that place that people can sit and talk. So where is it for each of us that we have those conversations and feel okay having those conversations? Is it at home? Is it with mates at the pub? I'm interested to see. Is it, you know, like this in front of 20 cameras?
I think it was, I think it was, so I do a lot of CBT, so I've done that for a number of years just to try and help with stuff. You were saying about being in recovery. I went to an AA meeting, my first one the other week. So yeah, kind of for me, a lot of it is like tailoring it to how I want to perform best and live as the best version of me. So yeah, a little on the fence with the AA meeting, just personally because of the way that I view things. But I also have the separate conversation with CBT. But away from that, I don't particularly have. There are people in your life that you can connect with and have a conversation. But in terms of broad groups with lads, are usually playing football, and you don't really do that at all. So this is really interesting for me to sit with you guys and talk about it.
Definitely. I mean, for me, I don't know. Like, I feel like I've always struggled with something in my life, and it's throughout since a kid always. It's always been something there, and I think you're uneducated on what that is. So for yourself, you think, oh nah, it's just me, innit? That's how I am. And so it's like, so I'm 27 now, so 23, 24 when I was talking about the brand that we started, just to kind of convey, just start talking and get everyone to start talking more, trying to get that next generation to be open and talk about it. And I think from that brand, I brought my friends in. We did the little campaign together, the photo shoots together. We were talking through that, and it became in my little group, because I'm the eldest in the group, that person that will come and speak to you about, you make sure you guys are okay and stuff like that. And I think from that age, I've always been like, right, fine, like baptizing fire, I've got to be the person that speaks about it. So that's why I had the tattoos that I have, because these are all our little kind of stories in my life. The reason, okay, I felt lonely at that point in my life, that album helped me, whatever it might be. Because when you go to different things like, I don't know, networking or whatever it might be, they ask, oh, what does that mean? And then I just openly talk about it. And it is a shock factor to begin with. I think people are, oh my God, like they may not want to know at that point, but by me doing that, then that whole conversation for the next hour or so is talking about mental health and what they may have gone through. Mm-hmm. So for me, I've always just trying to shock myself into, I've got to speak about it, because if I don't want my future kids to grow up feeling like they can't talk, because then otherwise there's no progression in that sense. So I feel like we have to evolve in that sense. So I have to be the one to do it.
Well, it sounds like you're saying that you know what it felt like to not talk. Yeah. And you don't want other people to be in that same position.
I don't want the next generation to feel the way I felt. My background comes from, I'm from a white area in that sense, so I'm the only Asian that I went to that school, primary school, secondary school and stuff, and that's where that kind of loneliness comes from. Or maybe not fitting in and feeling like I'm different and I didn't know what that was. Mm-hmm. So I don't want my kids or their friends and all them kind of next generation to feel like they can't talk about those things, because otherwise, what's the point then, really, in that sense?
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's getting better? Do you think people are more likely to?
No, definitely. I always use the example of my dad, and he's like 52 now, 53 this weekend, and comes from a very hard background, obviously. His parents came over from India, so it's not the normal conversation. They don't talk about those things. You just like get up, stop crying, carry on, do the next thing.
Suppress.
Yeah, definitely. And he's always suppressed those feelings, being the eldest in the group. Like, he's always looked after his brother and sister, never talked about himself. And even now, when you're a kid, you think, why is he having a go at me? Is it like, because I do a little thing and he's having a go at me? But that may have been kind of everything building up. And it's only now he uses the words like, I'm emotionally drained. And I feel like I've done something there to help him, that he can kind of express how he's feeling a little bit more. So when I see that, I feel like we've done something to help him in that sense. So definitely it's the next generation and kind of the old generation in that sense.
Yeah, there's a real connectivity there between both generations. It sounds like you're thinking about future generations, but a big driving factor is influencing your dad. by the
Yeah,
sounds of it.
absolutely, and it strengthens our relationship in that sense, because then we can just talk, just sit down, and it doesn't have to be about what you may feel in that time. It could just be about what family members annoying you, or how's work and stuff like that. But it's a more integrated conversation rather than just I'm okay. How was your week? Yeah, it was all right. In that
A
sense.
superficial
Yeah,
interchange.
definitely. And I know I'm guilty of that. I always do it. I don't really want to burden people. I would say, I'm good, man, I'm good. But it might have been a bad week, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and I think though that speaks to probably what a lot of people can resonate with, right? Like that actually we can ask how somebody is and not actually either want to hear how they are, or we can kind of ask and be on our way and we actually haven't got the space or the capacity to hear how they are. And the difference then in actually stopping and pausing and checking in and how am I feeling? Because I was curious about how you all were feeling being here today. Right, like how are you feeling being here? You've mentioned about the cameras, you're meeting new people, you're meeting me. What kind of feelings come up for you all?
It's quite a strange one actually, because I thought that I'd arrive and feel quite intimidated, anxious. But actually I think with the drive that's in me to share the information and knowing that these guys are here doing the same thing, I feel quite relaxed and ready to talk, which I didn't think, I didn't know whether I would be or not.
Yeah, so that surprised you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think after the drive, an hour's drive in the pissing rain in the dark, that was my anxiety, sitting there holding the steering wheel like, come on.
Right.
Getting here talking to you guys is easy for me because I do it every single day. My life has been enriched by conversation. Speaking to people every day about their struggles makes my life enriched, basically. So I'm just excited to be here to meet some strong chaps who are, talking about some stuff that a lot of people wouldn't even dream of talking about, and we've got the courage to do so. So yeah, it feels really powerful to be here. And yeah, like you say, actually, the sort of fear of what I'm going to talk about isn't really there. It's about being present and listening and learning something from you guys, and then hopefully instilling some kind of wisdom or something from what I've been through, and maybe someone will resonate with that. So yeah, it feels like excitement now after the trepidation of driving over in the rain.
Yeah, I think I'm excited now I'm here and stuff. Initially when first got invited on, it was Black Friday at work, so it's very, very busy. So I kind of looked at the dates and I was just very quick to just give an excuse of like, I've got too much on, I'm not going to be able to go.
Right.
Kind of slept on it the next day then. I came back and I was like, actually, you know what? I'm going to get something from this. I'm going to raise awareness from this. I'm intrigued about how it can help me and help others, so I changed my mind.
But that's a healthy thing to take that time
Exactly,
to
yeah.
think about it, because I wouldn't. I was like, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But actually taking the time to step back and think about why, I think that's really a positive thing.
So I was probably more nervous coming and doing this than going up and standing in front of rooms of strangers and trying to make them laugh, just purely on that vulnerability kind of piece, and understanding that behind everything there's always drivers for people that makes them do things or act in certain ways, and sharing those different bits as to why you do things or the other stuff. I think it's really interesting what you said, like I think we're all of a very similar generation in here, and we've kind of seen probably our dads or elders, or like the traditional older school ways, not passing judgment on it, of dealing with things. And I think it's really powerful that we're all kind of sat here going, right, I actually think that there's a better way that we can do it. We can break the chain.
Yeah.
And I resonate with you a lot. Like I've got tattoos about the same things, about different points. And it is that I do kind of say, right, the buck stops with me in terms of, having that shut down, suppressing, and then obviously the other things that come with that, kind of addictions and bits like that. And I'll learn about it and engage so I can be better for myself, and then also for people who follow up and be that kind of leader, I guess, in terms of it. But yeah, definitely felt more nervous doing this, just being like, I don't know where it's going to go. I can't control it, which is giving away the manipulation of stand-up comedians. But I don't want. we're good people, really.
So you'd rather have someone shouting abuse at you and you know, heckling
Well,
you than be sat here talking about
think,
emotions?
I think that's like, I generally think that's part of it as well, is that I'm guessing as grown up as lads, like a lot of the conversation is, especially when you get, I'd say if you get older lads, the way that they show that they care about you is giving you a bit of grief, isn't it? So then you just get used to getting grief all the time, and you feel comfortable in that space because you can just sort of joust with each other. And then actually, you know, going and speaking to boys or anything like that, you're a bit like, how do you do this? Because you don't know how it's going to be received. You don't know if it's going to be judged, but underneath it all, I do think that we're kind of desperate, almost not desperate, but almost desperate for that connectivity and chat between boys, and know that it's okay.
I think for me as well, one of the things, without knowing everybody else's story before I was coming, you're kind of thinking, are my problems worthy of being here? And that's like a true thing of men, is like, you might think something's bad to you, but you might not be comfortable enough to bring it up to your friends because you might not see it as a big deal when it could be. So that was something that went through my mind quite a lot.
So this tendency
Thinking, am I worthy of being here, sort of thing,
to minimise whatever you've been through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I was like, do I need to be here? Because my problems can't be as bad as anyone else's. But like, I don't know, you just have to, you live by yourself, don't you, in your own mind and stuff like that. I was nervous more about the cameras and stuff like that more than anything. I'm happy to talk about my mental health and stuff like that, but like you say, you don't know where it's going to go in that sense, and you don't want, you're unsure what other people's opinions are when they watch it in that sense.
I think sometimes like you unearth something as well. You unearth something as well when you just kind of communicate, and you're like, oh bloody hell, I've got to go and work on this now. I didn't realise that this was a driver or a trigger or something. So I mean, a lot of the stuff like if you sit sober and stare at your night in the light, you know what's wrong. And having to kind of face up to it. So when you do have these conversations, you go, oh sugar, like, right, now I've got to go and do this or work on this or understand a little bit more. So I think that can be some of the nervousness around having an open conversation, because you actually expose what's troubling you or anything like that. But we do minimise it, and as I do feel as though you kind of play, a lot of the stuff is out externally as well. People invalidate people's experiences, and they don't mean to do it. It's not that they do, but it's like, oh, you're not that bad. I've had it going on 36-hour benders and like not coming home, but and I'll be like, look, I'm trying to stop drinking and whatnot. What goes on with it? And people will be like, oh, you're not that bad. It's like, well, I know internally that I am, because I know that I'm aiming down. So yeah, I feel as though this is a good safe space.
And it can be a spectrum, can't it? So that we could start by minimising, but if you think about at the other end of that spectrum, it could be complete dismissal. Right, you're talking about complete invalidation. And I think you're right, that can be an external thing, but I think it can also come internally. Right, we can dismiss ourselves. And I guess hearing you talk about how you feel about today, I know you haven't said anything yet, Bill, in terms of how you might be feeling, but I am hearing a little bit of a mixture between some apprehension about what might I find out about myself, like that's between me and me, and also what's it going to be like to expose this, right, in front of other people, and what are other people going to think or judge me on, or, so that's between you and others, right, and it sounds like there's a blend of flavours there between the both.
Yeah. Definitely, I don't think I'd actually thought about exposing anything in front of like you guys, so that would be interesting if something like that comes out. I think there was just a general nervousness about coming into like a new space and meeting new people. But I think talking about my personal journey and mental health in general is something I've kind of had to do over the past few years, so it doesn't really bother me in that sense. But I think when you're surrounded by a group of people who also want to do the same thing, it can only be positive, really, in that sense.
There is the positive part.
There's that kind of like, you're grouped together, you're all in the same situation, and you're there to kind of be there for each other and help each other out. So I feel like it's going to be a good experience.
Yeah.
It's not a normal feeling, vulnerability. putting myself out there, feeling vulnerable is terrifying. I'm about protection and protecting myself from everything that's going on. I've always tried to do that, controlling everything that goes on around me to my detriment. So coming here knowing I'm going to be vulnerable is terrifying, absolutely terrifying. But what I find is that I have to do those terrifying things in order to grow or progress or learn or change the habits, because I tried living life on my terms and it didn't particularly work out very well. So now I'm trying to live life on different terms, on somebody else's terms. I believe in a higher power, so I believe that something else is going to sort my life out for me. So this kind of thing of being vulnerable is allowing myself to say, right, this is something new, this is something different. I'm going to learn something from this, regardless whether it's positive, negative, or anything like that. I have to put myself in those situations to grow, and if I don't, I'm just going to stagnate. And my danger is I go back to the old behaviours of drinking, toxic relationships, drugs, and I don't want to do that. So if it means coming and sitting with a few guys and talking about things that are happening, well, I'm going to do that. Because that's how I'm going to grow and I'm going to progress. And if somebody somewhere gets something out of it, well, that's a bonus, isn't it? But I think the vulnerability aspect is kind of really important here, that I'm nervous about what I'm going to talk about and who's going to see it, but it's something new for me in order to feel that way. So I'm going to lean into that as opposed to shy away from it.
Yeah, and I'd be pretty surprised, honestly, if any of you said you weren't nervous. Like that would maybe, you know, spark something for me to think, oh, okay, that's curious then, because, you know, I mentioned there, this is, you know, revealing our innermost thoughts and feelings. And I think earlier on we were talking about, actually, there is such a drive and a desire for that. And then for many reasons, and you've talked already a little bit about intergenerational experiences, you've talked a little bit about society, and we're starting to talk about maybe ways that you've ended up coping with feelings that have been difficult, overwhelming, that we end up pushing it down, right? We end up either just trying to avoid it completely, but at the same time, there is still this desire of it needs to be met, and at the moment it's going unmet, right? And we try to find lots of ways then to fill that. And you've spoke a little bit about different ways of coping there, and it sounds like there's some. You took a sigh. I mean, it was an intake of breath actually when you mentioned your AA meeting, and I was curious about that because a sigh is often a sign of anxiety, and so there was some feelings around that.
Yeah, I think I don't know where I'm at in my journey with it as such. Like again, you're in that bit where I feel as a bloke, you don't kind of want to say I've got a problem with this, and when I went to the meeting, I found it really quite overwhelming. And
Can you say more about that? So I'm just gonna, because overwhelming is like a generalised term. What was overwhelming?
So everybody in the meeting shares. So they share their experience or share that they want to do, share what's kind of bugging them or their journey and stuff like that. And there was quite a lot of people in the meeting. There was probably about 40, 50. And it was, the reason it was overwhelming was the sense that people were desperate for a conversation. There were so many hands that were going up and wanting to share all the time, and there wasn't enough space for those people to take up their 5 minutes to do it. And just the sheer amount of pain that people were in and the stories that they were talking about, and it wasn't like a game who had the worst story or anything like that. They all just wanted to share. But like you were saying earlier, we kind of invalidate our own kind of experiences with stuff, but they've affected us in a way to make us do the things that we do. So in terms of alcohol, drugs and stuff like that. And I had to remember that I was there because of the things that have gone on in my life. And I was putting that judgment onto sort of stuff and going, well, okay, well, that sounds terrible. I want to give everybody a hug and make sure everyone's all right. Instead of kind of, you know, that wrestling bit with yourself where you're like, okay, I'm here because I have my own needs, as opposed to wanting to make it all right for everybody else. You kind of have to get your own house in order before you're available to be that person to everybody else. So that was why I felt quite overwhelmed. And it was a strange experience. But I was saying, so I'd done for nearly 4 months sober, no drugs or anything, and like I did fall back into I did one night where I just got completely overwhelmed, people pleased, wanted to make sure everybody else was comfortable because it was all really awkward and I felt awkward, so I was like, right, I'll be this loud gregarious character that everybody can get on with and kind of act up a role. Obviously ended up hurting myself, but I found it interesting. I don't know if the same with that, but I was like, right. So I spoke to my therapist after, and I was like, look, this was a slip. Like, it wasn't a relapse, it was a slip. But the chap that I spoke to in the AA meeting was like, oh, this is relapse. This is you've fallen, you've done it. And I was like, well, the problem is my critical parent in my head will shame me constantly and be like, oh, you couldn't do it, you're shit, you've fallen off, you're not worth it, look at you, you're lying, all of that. Whereas when I kind of thought of it as a slip on an upward trajectory, it made me a lot more comfortable to be able to say, look, I don't want to do that, and I want to make the steps for myself, as opposed to, I kind of feel as though that regimented stuff is what I've suffered with in terms of, I don't know if this is the same, but mine's been like, you're not good enough, what have you done, you've lied, you've done this, you've done that, and then shame myself into the point where I go, fuck it.
That's the point, isn't it? Fuck it. Gets to that point of, well, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
I've already fucked up, so I might as well go drinking. I'm completely like that. That's I hit the fuck it button.
Yeah.
When I get confused, when I get self-conscious, when I get scared, when I get...
I'm not laughing at that. I am just laughing at the fuck it button, because I think at different times you do just go, yeah, all right then.
That's it. It's
right,
literally that. Am I going to press it?
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck it, press it. I'm off. But for me, meetings, it doesn't matter if it's addiction meetings or if it's group therapy or if it's, walking and talking with your mates. It's a space where, I think Adam touched on it and so did Bill, we're all here for a reason that we want to share how we feel. AA meetings, recovery meetings are a room full of people who have something to share. And I will learn something from that meeting, regardless of whether it's positive or negative. And that for me has been the biggest change, is finding these spaces where people are willing to share their stories. Gives me the confidence to share my story, to realise that I'm not broken.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not a broken person. I'm someone who just had to deal with the shit that was thrown at me over the years. And like you said, I don't like the word relapse. It kind of makes me feel like I failed.
Yeah.
But the ability you've shown to say, well, actually it was a slip, and I'm worth more than that, and I'm better than that, so I'm going to try again, and next time maybe I'll get 6 months, next time maybe it was 12 months. Yeah. And that, like you say, the progression isn't straight up, is it? It's up, down, left, right, in, out, round. But those rooms, these kind of rooms, allow the space to share that and for people to go, yeah, well done, mate. Yeah. Because 4 months sober is amazing. Yeah. It's really amazing, and it's got to be celebrated, because I don't know about you, but I don't celebrate anything that I do positively. Yeah. I'm always like, yeah, but you could have done that better, couldn't you? You should have done that. 99% would be good, and I'll be on that 1% going, why don't you do that? If everyone else is doing it, why didn't you do it? Yeah. So, celebrating those small wins in rooms like this, I think, is massive. And
is huge, yeah. And is that, I've noticed nodding from other people when you've been talking about either this inner critic, you kind of talked about it as a parental voice, right? And again, we could think a bit about that together, that often that inner critic is often an amalgamation of the people that we spent the most amount of time with from the ages of about 0 to 7, right? That kind of inner harsh voice can be a collection of those voices, right, of those really significant people very early on. But is that something that is shared in the group? Like, do you find that you all have your own inner critic? The fuck it button, in my mind, is the self-destruct button, right? Because that's essentially what you're doing. Sometimes it's destructive to other people, right, of course, but often, at the heart of it, it's self-destruct, right? And I wonder, do the rest of the people here experience this inner critic, or...?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, for me, I don't have an addiction, like substance and stuff like that. For me, the fuck it button is, I'm a lost cause. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. I can't fix it. So, and I think coming from a caring background, obviously the NHS and stuff like that, it's always, and I know they always clap for the heroes, all that kind of stuff, but like that essence of you're there for someone else, you're not there for yourself. Obviously the wages and this, you're clearly not there for yourself, you're there to care for other people. And I think that kind of then somehow intertwines into yourself, and you basically come into a cycle of, okay, go in, I worked at the children's hospital, care for the children, come home, that's it. And I think that comes into my everyday life now. Like you were saying when you went to the AA, I mean, like you were worried about everyone else for their stories.
Yeah.
You were like, want to give everyone a hug. And for me, that's the thing. I want to, okay, look, let's talk. Let's make sure you feel better, this and that. And you just go around, you keep doing that with your friends and stuff and your family. And you don't want to burden them with, actually, I do need to talk about something, but I don't want to add to you. So for me, like the pocket button is like, I'll just stop talking. I'm a lost cause in the sense of what's going on inside. Don't feel like I can fix it. I'll try to maintain it and then just be there for everyone else. And I don't know where that becomes from. Obviously, it's only me and my brother, so I'm the eldest in that sense. And in my cousin group, I'm the eldest and stuff like that. So I don't know if it comes from that side of things, but yeah.
So I'm the eldest as well. I, in my personal belief, like kind of being the eldest one, the firstborn, you know, expectations set on the pride and joy, and then you, depending on your role within the family, then you can kind of get pinned with a lot of stuff, especially if your family's quite dysfunctional, and then you carry the burdens of other people, and then you become naturally a bit of a people pleaser. And that I'm not calling you that, but I just recognised that within myself. I don't know if anyone had this with COVID, but I was exactly the same. I was like, are you all right, checking in with every single other person? And then I got to about 6 months in, and I hadn't at all done any kind of self-realisation. I had just a full, like, absolute push that button and pushed it hard. Like, I just repetitively bashed it for about 9 months. So I reckon, and I do say, and you do kind of notice it with firstborns or eldest child, is you do carry the weight of other people.
Definitely. When we're talking about leading up to this, for example, when I said I'm happy to do it and stuff, I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
And so only this week coming up to it, in your head you're like, a lot of stuff starts rolling through. I'm like, oh God, what about this? Actually, I do this because of this, and I'm like, and it starts getting in my head and stuff. And I think one thing for me is, I don't like, I welcome it. So being the eldest, obviously stuff like that. My wife's not. In her family, she's one of the youngest, so she's kind of learned a little bit when getting married to me in terms of the stature of the family and how you make sure everyone's okay and do things and stuff. But I do, and it's unhealthy, but I do welcome the stress, so the weight on your shoulders. And if I don't have weight on my shoulders, like the mental health stuff, so if I don't deal with it, I feel like it just focuses me more.
So let me just clarify something, because I think this is important, that you're saying in one regard it feels strange if you don't have that weight on your shoulders, right? Like if you're not feeling burdened by something in a way that your nervous system has become so used to stress, chronic stress, that actually it feels weird to not have something problematic, something difficult to deal with. 100%. And I do think that speaks to then this real strange relationship that we can have ourselves with the things that cause us pain, right? Like we can actually take pleasure in the things that cause us pain. Right? And it can be hard to admit that. It can be hard to say there is a part of me that's being gratified in this, maybe linking it back to that internal critic that believes you should be punished, right? Actually, you deserve punishment, whether that's because it's the shame, whether it's because it's the rage that's inside of you, whether it's because of the grief that you've kept buried. But this idea that in some way we can have a very complicated relationship with the things that cause us pain in our life, right? So it can be hard to give it up.
No, I think, like, you know, when I talked about obviously dealing with it for my whole life, I feel like if, you know, miraculously it's all fixed and I'm all okay and stuff like that, then who do I become? Because I'm now, I like who I am now, and I know that the story that I've had led me up to the person I am. Obviously, my wife loves me because she's married to me and stuff like that, and like we all, you know, everyone understands and likes me in that sense. I know that, but I feel like if I was to then somehow fix it and it's all okay, then actually that's probably about 95% of me gone.
Okay. Surely that fixing it can be such an inspiration to people who aren't at that point.
No, absolutely. But then I feel like that goes back to then me becoming that person of that kind of martyr. Is like, well, then the next generation, at least they can see that they can do it. But then I'm then lost, and if I'm lost, then I feel like my wife doesn't have me, my brother doesn't have me, my family doesn't have me, and then.
But you talked about it as being a martyr, right? Which is very interesting. Again, that actually there is this sense that I have to suffer, right? I need to be punished, And that if I don't have that, and I think what you're speaking to is, who am I? Right? Who am I underneath these layers of the things that I've told myself, or the labels that I've identified with, or the roles that I've played? And honestly, the people that I see in clinic, most of the time they come to me and they say, I don't know who I am. Right? I am going through life blind, and I am, and it's a common experience. I'm guessing there's some laughter because there's some resonance.
It is. Sometimes I feel like I'm blindfolded in someone else's house, and like I'm just have no clue where and you're just like, right, I'll dig in and see where it goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm laughing because it's a term or a phrase that I use quite a bit.
Yeah, like driving blind through life, right?
And I think what you said about the kind of, unless you're in some form of pain, or you get to that place where sometimes you'll get there and you're like, life's actually all right at the minute. Like I feel quite good. Like I feel good in myself. I don't feel stressed. And then you're like, oh, my head's above the parapet here. Like I've got to cause some. There's got to be some chaos. Right, I'm going to move to the other side of the world.
Bring it on.
And now I've got to bring it on. Yeah, I've definitely, especially in these last periods of months where you're kind of going inwards and looking at yourself, gone, yeah, where's the chaos then? Because I've got to try and find some pain. And I've done that, I don't know if it's the same, but I've done that in relationships, unfortunately, where, say, me and my partner split up a year ago and had a really, really good supportive partner. And I just couldn't see it. I couldn't see it because I was like, how can anybody... I couldn't sit still and watch TV. I needed to be doing something because of proving. And then would be like, how can anyone love me? Just sat watching TV with me. This is weird. I need to go and do this. And then I, unfortunately, not realising, but the way that I received love was through that punishment and pain and striving and all of that, instead of just being it. So I'd obviously drive myself to do things that would mean that I became this person that was trying to prove itself all the time to the other person. And she just wasn't interested. She was just like, you don't have to do this. But I made her something that obviously my nervous system wanted her to be. There was someone that could give me that adrenaline, I accept you and I do away with you and all of that sort of stuff. And I hadn't realised it was me driving it a lot at the time because the way I received love.
There is this tendency for us all to, we call it kind of the repetition compulsion, which is that we repeat what we haven't resolved.
Yeah.
Right, so there are things that come from our history that we will continue to repeat unconsciously, right? We won't know that we're doing it necessarily. We don't, decide. It's not necessarily always the fuck it button. We will do it in ways that are really subtle, right? And very insidious at times, but we end up then repeating, whether it's relationships, whether it's conflicts that we haven't resolved from very early on, because there's a drive for us to master them, right? So we find ourselves in the same place. How the hell have I got here again? Right, here I go again. And yet it's because inside of us, psychologically, we are trying to overcome it. We're trying to master it. But we do need then new ways to do it, right? If we're doing the same thing, we're going to get the same outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering about, Adam and John, like whether you're resonating, and Bill with the inner critic.
I think no, on that side of things. Some of the things that have been mentioned, I can definitely resonate with. When you mentioned like being the eldest child, I've never really thought about that, but I am as well. So for me, my I'm quite fortunate to say, like probably most of my life, I've not really struggled with any kind of mental health stuff. I'd like to think I'm quite like rational and happy, like childhood. I can't really say there's anything kind of negative to look back on. My kind of period of grief has kind of come in the last 10 months, where I lost a friend to suicide at the start of the year, and then my wife's had 2 miscarriages in the last 10 months when we're trying for our first baby. So I kind of feel like I don't really know how I'm dealing with this at the moment, and I can't say I've hit like the fuck it button or anything like that, because I don't really feel like I'm at that point. But I also feel like what you say about being the elder child, I'm just trying to constantly create such an environment of positivity for my wife and stuff, and bottle it all up, that I probably haven't expressed myself to know how I feel.
Can we explore that now?
Yeah, that's why I'm intrigued to be here, one of the main reasons.
So as you sit here and say that, you say you've been bottling it up, what's coming up inside as you tell me that? It's not like I want to go and sit in the car and cry my eyes out about it, but it's just, I just feel like I've never had chance to really be down about it, because I'm so conscious that like she's really struggled. I want to make sure that
any time she's negative or upset, I'll kind of just try and eliminate that. Not by like saying, oh, you're being stupid or stuff. I'm being there for as much as I can, but I want to kind of just try and turn it on its head, look at things and look at the positives and say, oh, it's going to be okay and blah, 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 and just deal with it that way.
Heavy?
Yeah,
that weight?
when I do think about it, yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of people always say, oh, how are you doing and stuff, and I'll be like, oh, I'm okay and stuff, but yeah.
So if you couldn't say okay, because okay is not a feeling, right? I will often say this, that fine is not a feeling. How are you feeling when you talk about it? Because I noticed, I asked how you were feeling and you went to tell me your thoughts, right? I don't want to sit in a car and cry, but I wonder actually how are you feeling then underneath that? Because you're talking about tremendous loss.
Yeah, stressed, really stressed about it all. Feel like a massive weight on my shoulders, which isn't going to go until kind of we actually do have a baby and stuff like that. I think I'm very anxious about the future because having 2 miscarriages, you kind of think, oh, it's just going to happen again. So I'm kind of thinking like, what's going to happen in the future? So I can't really be excited for anything at the moment.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's kind of draining any possibility of excitement from you. And you mentioned your friend too. I mean, it sounds like this has all happened in a very short space of time.
Yeah, so he took his own life, and that was 2 weeks before Molly first found out she was pregnant. So it was like such like a wave of emotions of being like really, really down to being like, Jesus Christ, we're having a baby. And then 8 weeks later, lost the baby as well. So it was like...
Yeah, I notice it coming up now as
Yeah.
Are you able to let it come? Are you able
Yeah,
to honour those feelings that I can see, like it rises?
Yeah.
But I also see it's like there's a battle inside of you as you do that to kind of shove it back down.
Yeah,
right?
that's probably what I'm like as a person.
Yeah. Where do you notice that inside? Where is the battle happening? You know, like the feeling that comes up, but then the kind of anxiety that's constricting it back.
I don't know, really. Weird feeling. Yeah, just
it
a fear,
here
yeah.
or here?
Up here, yeah, in my face.
Yeah. Because it can get quite high, it looks like. It kind of comes behind your eyes
Yeah.
and then...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you talk about this idea that actually you're trying to support, is it your wife you said?
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's a part of you that sees that in order to do that, you can't join her in that emotion, right? Like as if that you have to be the strong one.
Yeah. If she's like sat crying on the sofa, like I can't let myself cry around her sort of thing.
Is it always been that way or?
Yeah, so. Yeah.
You mentioned, look, I don't want to go and sit in a car and cry. And often we tell ourselves the things that we don't want to do, which are the very things that we do want to do, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't want to do this, really can often be, I absolutely want to go and do that. And I wonder, do you ever let yourself have that time, even if it's not in front of her?
I do like running. So like I'll find myself, like if I need to get some time alone where I don't have to be positive or if I want to be upset about something, I'll just go for a run and do that. And that works well. I'll clear my head and I'll come back and I'll just go again.
Does it, again, you know, forgive me because I'm kind of really zoning in here, but it's applicable to you all. Hopefully you'll see that. Do you allow yourself to have the emotion? Do you allow yourself to cry when you are running?
I did after the second one, yeah.
Yeah.
That day.
Yeah.
Strong,
good,
isn't it? Like,
Good.
Yeah.
when
I
you're
literally
exercising and it's all coming out.
I went we
really
got back
intense.
from hospital, put my running stuff, I was like, I need to go for a run. Literally 2 minutes into the run, heaven's like pissing down with rain. I was just running wet through, like really emotional, yeah.
Yeah.